Over the past few years, my mom and I have tried to do some gardening all over the house to essentially try to not have to mow as much. That's really been the premise as to why we started gardening, but it's just gotten pretty addictive. The way that we've gone about it is just the most budget-friendly, low-cost version. So that means that we've learned a lot along the way and just tried to keep on improving time and time again. When we first started the sides by the house, we used these small fencing from Amazon to essentially mark our area. But unfortunately, throughout time, all of the weeds, they started actually growing through it, which made it very hard to clean up and keep tidy. So to get all of that cleaned up, we got a shovel to start marking the line all along where the fence was, so then we could try to rip it. Now, there were some areas that the weeds were so overgrown on top of the actual fence that we actually had to use that shovel to pull out that entire weed from the root still attached to the fence line to be able to get rid of this thing. It was pretty intense, but it was definitely worth it. So the whole goal for this particular project was really, let's get this cleaned up and let's put up a new fence that will actually look nice and we can maintain. And this was a project that took my mom and I basically an entire morning. We went out around 6:30 a.m. and came back into the house around 1. So it took a long time, but we were very fortunate with the weather being comparable. So our first step was to remove that old fencing, and to do that we had to continue digging not only on one side but also dig out the other side because it was just attached so well to the fence. There was no way that either my mom or I had the strength to actually pull it out from the ground, and even if we did, because of the condition of the fence, even though it looks like it's not corroded, it was breaking apart very quickly. When it came to this, again, because we're just using basic tools that we had, then it meant that like as I was pushing the shovel or she was pushing the shovel, we were trying to leverage the weight of our own bodies to push it back and forth and really just move it around, wiggle it to try to break up the roots and the soil so it wouldn't be as tight. The key to all the gardening projects, I believe, is just really trying to figure out what's the easiest way to go about things. I know gardening is like a world of its own on what's accepted, what's not accepted, but for us it's just trying to stick to the basics and try to make it as budget friendly as possible and take all the lessons learned. So one of the best tools that we have to simplify our lives is this little gardening cart. It saves so much trouble from having to carry all of the equipment, all of the heavy items by hand. After we got all of the fencing out, all of the weeds around the general area, then I put one of the spike posts right at the end so that I could then tie twine on it to create a straight line from the end of the front yard all the way up to the beginning of the front yard, and really just kind of figuring out, okay, what are some of those extra weeds that we didn't see or didn't think we would need to get rid of. A challenge that we ended up encountering once we did that is just all of the weeds that were still in there, sadly. And because the weeds were so happy to be there and all of the plants were really just adapting very well to the area, then it meant that as we were getting rid of it, we were also getting rid of a lot of soil. We didn't want to risk leaving the soil, and then there were roots in there, and then we would just have to do this whole cleanup all over again. So we're trying to really build for preventing additional work in the future. And I'm not even sure if these are considered weeds or they're just overgrown grass, but regardless, they were unwantables by us. Of course, as we went along, we kind of checked in on Flaquito, who is our resident feral stray cat. He was really enjoying just resting while we worked on the other side of the house. Once we finally got rid of all of the weeds, then we got into the post section. So we first needed to determine how frequent those posts needed to be. So I measured the entire length of the front yard, and then figured out about more or less what the number would be that the fence posts would still look nice in, because if you put them too far apart, then it just looks weird because of the materials we're using. And for us, that was about 4 feet and 3 inches. So in each of those locations, we put the stick fence down right by the line, and then went one by one trying to dig out each of the holes so that we could bury it even further. Now, we were extremely fortunate in finding a shovel that was very long at the thrift shop right the day before, but you can also do this project just with a shovel by hand. The main thing is just trying to make sure that you have enough space for that little leg where people would usually stand on to push it down further, so that it does go nice and deep into the ground. This method is obviously a lot more labor intensive, but it is doable, and it is actually the method that we used for the other side of the front yard. The reason why we were digging these deeper holes is because we do live in Florida, so with the hurricanes and all that, we wanted to make sure that this was secured a lot deeper rather than just that surface level little foot pressure. So once the hole was deep enough where that first clip was essentially hiding, so then it would make it just extra strong, because now it has that the fact that it is embedded into the ground, and it's also going to have that leg which is going to have weight on it constantly from the sand, so it's not going to move as much. So I started off by doing the leg in the corner first, in the front corner, so that my actual string would keep on telling me exactly where to make the rest of the holes. So I just kept on adding and adding sand until I was satisfied with it. It was about 2 inches away from the very top, and then I just covered it with regular soil in case, I don't know, maybe later on I want to add a flower or something. We did already go through a hurricane season with the other side, and everything went well. We also waited for our HOA to see if they would say something about the fence, but everything's been okay, which is why we were okay to move ahead and do this other side of the house, making the holes, filling them with sand, filling them with soil on top. So once all of the posts were on the ground, I could remove that initial string that I used to keep them aligned. And then we got into the mulching part. So up to this point, in the past few years, we've been using cardboard a lot to prevent the weeds from growing, but they're still growing, and the garden has continued to expand. My mom has put in a lot of flowers in here, so now we have upgraded to this weed cloth. So we started off doing some measurements by hand, which were about 1 hand and a little bit of my thumb for the first bit, and the idea was to cover both our side and a little bit of our neighbors so that they could just maintain their area, and then everything that was kind of surrounding those posts, nothing would get on it. So as we put all of the plastic, if there was any of the wood chips that were underneath, I did try to recycle a little bit because we didn't have that much mulch for this project. Once we laid down that first section, we realized that it was a little bit too short, so we ended up doing 2 full hand width strips to cover our side as well as the dip, and then just cut smaller pieces. It's just an approximate. We didn't think it would be too rough for us to just have overlapping fabric. That just means that there's extra strength for the cloth and the weeds to not grow there. So again, trying to keep the weeds out is a very big part of what we're trying to do. The lower maintenance we can make this, the better off we think we will be in the long run. We just kept trying to size them up and fill in those spaces all along the fence line that the cloth was just not big enough, and putting some of that mulch weight so that they wouldn't move around with the wind as we were still working on it. Once we got past all of the basic placement of all of the fabric, then we went around and added some mulch to, again, fill in the corners, especially towards the neighbor's side, so that they would be free to mow and do their thing and not be impacted by our mulch. Thankfully, our neighbors are very nice and very understanding of just us trying to do our best to make our home look as best as possible on a budget. So we definitely like that we were able to keep all of their area nice and tidy. Of course, I did do a little quick stop to say hi to my beautiful cat Shinobi while we were putting away all of the stuff that we used for digging the holes and doing the mulch and all of that. So this rope that we got is actually from the Dollar Tree, and it is the perfect length, at least for our area. It is one of the longest, and we also love that we were able to find this green, black, and brown patterns, like a camo pattern, that really fits in nicely with the garden. Now, as you can see, there's just a lot of knotting and passing of the string from one side to the other and then tightening it up. The biggest quirk with doing this fence post is making sure that it's nice and tight and being patient with it so that you can make the little adjustments. It may just be like a centimeter off, and making it look like it has that tension so that it just looks more professional in my opinion. So this part is definitely not as labor intensive as the others, but it does take some time to get used to, and it can get a little confusing at times to know how to hold the string right so that you can tighten it without that much effort. But every single time that we did a knot in those in-between posts, we always tighten them. And in the end, once you reach that point where you're done, then we did 2 to 3 knots and tightened it again so that it wouldn't come loose. Now, unfortunately, when we were moving it around, we did notice that the pole was leaning a little bit, especially the 2 ends, because again, we're tightening, so it's almost like it's competing for which way it should go. So to help it stay sturdy and not flop to the side, we put one of these little side ledges that the house originally came with. That's not in a good condition, but it does the job. So I hid it under the ground, threw some of the soil on top and then mulched it so it won't be seen, but it did give it that extra strength that it needed. And once we were done with putting all of the different ropes on each of those little clips, then we were able to cut off the excess and just admire our beautiful fence. Yes, it's got imperfections and there are some lessons learned in this one too, but at the end of the day, it does the job and it will look very nice once all of those trees are grown out. So hopefully this video helps someone else out there that's just trying to do some gardening fence that is affordable, that's not gonna cost thousands, and that is extremely budget friendly, just to make your home a more beautiful and happy place to be. If you enjoyed these type of projects, be sure to subscribe because my mom and I create all types of budget-friendly DIYs just as things come up in our day-to-day life. So hopefully we'll be able to inspire you. Thanks for watching.